Yeah, thank you very much. Well, thank you everybody for joining the webinar today. I think you could probably think that there are a lot of people who have come here trying to find better solutions for accounts payable processing. And that is because, oftentimes accounts payable, it's a necessary evil in every organization, right? You have to pay your vendors to survive and to keep going. But, many times accounts payable processing, not only processing the invoices as well as paying the invoices are quite challenging. First of all, I think the biggest challenge is we talk about storage and management. Obviously, lots of organizations, as office rents go up, file cabinet space becomes a premium. People more and more are looking to digitize all these accounts payable invoices. Well, most people will scan the invoices and then manually type those invoices into the accounting system. So that doesn't really do well. The second challenge that a lot of folks face is in organizations with higher volumes of invoices in various formats. How do you deal with those? Some companies send you an invoice electronically. Some companies send it the old snail mail. Some companies may use other methods to send you the invoices. And every single time you get a different format of invoice, you've got to process those invoices differently. And the next thing talks about invoice payments approvals. If you're anything more than a 3 or 4 person organization, with one person is approving and maybe one person is paying the bills, there is a series of steps that have to go on in order for invoices to get approved and paid. So there might be multiple ways of an invoice approval. So it might be a numeric approval where someone says, okay, if the invoice is over $2,500, it has to go to the CFO. It might be a departmental approval. Well, if it's this department, then it's got to go to this department manager. It might be a combination of both. If it's a department manager over $5,000, it goes this way. And oftentimes those invoice decisions are either routed manually or routed via email. Well, routed manually obviously creates a whole series of paper issues, but then routed via email is actually more dangerous because all that appropriate routing sits in somebody's inbox, buried with hundreds of other emails. And then once that invoice is routed, then they've got to be manually typed into the accounting system. Let's talk about how invoices are paid. Lots of organizations cut paper checks, right? Well, if you're an organization that happens to have, let's say, multiple companies or multiple bank accounts, you have to go out and order check stock for every single account. And John will talk a little bit more about this later on, but, the cost to process an accounts payable check can be significant depending upon the number of people that have to handle those checks. So those are the types of challenges that I hope resonate with all of you, and those are the challenges that we're looking to resolve today. Why don't you go to the next slide, Jared, please. And now I'll turn it over to John from AvidXchange to talk about some of the common concerns with AP automation.
Thanks, David. Hey, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Just want to do a quick overview as far as some of the common concerns around AP automation that we've seen as far as from AvidXchange. I go out and speak to a lot of different customers, and what I've seen is a lot of commonality between as far as some of the concerns that they have. One is just the delay in receiving matching information. Rather than creating a bottleneck in your AP process, automation can really extract that information from the invoices in various file formats, thus reducing the manual effort of transferring that invoice information into the accounts payable workflow. Another commonality that I see is really getting the budget to invest into automation. They know they would like to do it, but it's a matter of allocating the appropriate budget. Gathering important data like invoice volumes, average cost per invoice, other key metrics to create a business case is really what a lot of AP managers are facing with. To create a business case needs to provide clear numbers to senior management to show how much their company can save with AP automation. And the third one that I see is just the perceptions on an alternate payment method and all around security. Automation, it does provide a service team we provide here at AvidXchange. It handles all of the heavy lifting from your AP staff. With banks, if you work with a bank, they may offer, a payment process for you, but they may contact only about 10% of your supplier base. But then what that does is that leaves you with the task to perform to outreach to the majority of your suppliers to really see how they may want to receive the payment. So let's talk about some of the what some of the drivers are in their automation. There's really what I've seen is probably around 3 key factors with AP automation as far as, and Jerry, if you could just switch over to the next slide, that'll be great. There you go. The focus around adopting new technologies has really historically been around customer-facing processes, which is why, upgrading the AP process has been neglected for most businesses. But companies now are ready to focus on the backroom of AP because they're beginning to understand the benefits of adopting automation into the whole process of their business. And what I've seen is really about 3 areas that are influenced why companies are automating AP automation. The first one is competition. And when I say competition, I'm not talking about different types of AP automation. It's really as far as competition with your competitors that you are facing with in the marketplace. As more businesses and organizations adopt AP automation technology, those that are still using a manual process will become less competitive. It's about 65% of businesses within the next few years are planning to switch to automation on their AP side. And just the pressure of meeting supplier expectations and cutting costs to remain competitive in the marketplace is influencing many companies to consider automating their AP processes among businesses in the U.S. A second influence that we've seen is around the expectation of millennials in the workplace. And this is a real strong factor moving forward. You think about it, more than 1/3 of the American labor force today are millennials. By far, they're the largest generation that is working in the U.S. So with this large workforce, the majority of them in this workforce, the majority of them in the financial industry being millennials, businesses will be influenced to transition their AP process to meet their expectations. If you think about the millennials and post-millennials, they've been raised in the cloud. They've been raised to use mobile applications, mobile apps, mobile computing technology. So what that means is training them with an archaic manual AP process would be counterproductive. Especially when you consider e-invoicing and automated workflows are really the future of AP processes. And the third influence that I've seen as far as that is really driving the AP adoption is what I consider the gray wave. It's really the number of baby boomers that are retiring. Baby boomers are retiring at an incredible rate. This is a key factor in determining AP automation adoption. As the baby boomer generation of finance workers, think about it, they are literally the last group to universally use manual AP as a process. It only really makes sense for AP departments when they are upgrading with this newer technology and they have this younger tech-savvy generation to begin to take a look at automating their AP processes from the archaic manual process that they've been using for the last couple of decades. And then, as far as why you should consider changing the way you want to pay as far as paying invoices. When managing accounts payable operations, one of the top goals of many companies is to make safe and secure supplier payments with as minimal effort on their side and as quickly as possible. However, many companies spend effort and time over than they would like. Different options are available to streamline this payment process. Organizations typically end up using tools and methods they perceive to be the simplest and the safest to use. Here's probably 4 companies that are considering changing the way they are processing invoices. The first one, fraud protection. It's all around reducing the number of checks and driving payments, which include, positive pay files, so you no longer have to submit that positive pay file to your bank. The number one organization. So if you can reduce the number of checks or just checks in general and having blank check stocks in your organization, that will reduce fraud from your organization. The second one is around the insight into data. It's really the increase into the visibility into invoices and all around the payment data. Everyone's been hearing all about this big data. So if you can take all this information that is around all your invoices, helps to improve the performance and helps to manage any type of mistakes that you may incur. The third one is really around all digitized. It's really around the powerful reporting and the added visibility to all the documents for your organization. And the last one is around streamlining and approvals. Tracking invoices electronically, having an automatic workflow. No longer are invoices sitting on someone's desk if they're outside of the office. A system will know that, and you can set triggers as far as after 2 or 3 days. It could be notified to other layers within inside your organization to take the appropriate action. And a real nice thing is that you can have the central repository for all of your invoices. So if you ever need to go back and look for or research on a particular invoice, instead of trying to figure out where that particular file was stored on in a particular file cabinet, it's going to all be stored electronically in the cloud. So it makes it a lot easier for you to look up and respond to your suppliers. So if you look at as far as the cost of processing a invoice, when you compare a manual process to an automated process, there's a dramatic difference between the two. A manual process, if you work in the cost of the labor cost, it's right around $15 just to process a invoice. When you automate it, it drops it by almost 50%. And these numbers are industry standards that we have seen that have been conducted by a number of different independent studies. So we do see about a 50% drop in the cost of processing an invoice. When you look at the actual payment of an invoice, it drops even greater from that. The payment, when you work in the cost of a check, the check stock, the labor that's involved in processing that check, a manual process, it's right around $7. Compared to an automated system, you're dropping it right around to $3 or even less than that. So the total cost drops right around 60% from a manual process to a automated process such as AvidXchange. So not only are there cost savings, but there's also the amount of time that it takes to process a invoice from a manual system to a automated system. Typically, what you see on a manual system takes from the time invoice until it actually is approved. It's right around 2 weeks. When you automate that process and you have everything in the cloud and you have these triggers for the workflow, you're going to reduce it from 12 days to a little over 3.5 days. So you're dropping it by almost 2/3 the amount of time that you are able to. It allows you to have greater visibility into the amount of payments that are due. It allows you to pay your vendors quicker if you would like, and it gives great visibility to your suppliers. One is they can have visibility for one, did you receive the invoice? And two, they can have visibility into when they will be paid. So by automating, not only there's a benefit on the cost side, but there's also a big advantage and benefit on the amount of time it takes to process a invoice. And you would expect that when you move in from any type of system. You know, it would be the same thing when companies were still paying their employees by a manual system. Now it's electronic and everyone is getting paid, you know, a 3 working day period, and you can pay your vendors just as quickly. You know, some of the benefits that we see as far as around automating, there's a number of them that we see as far as that companies are experiencing when they do move from a manual to an automated system. One is just the elimination of, you know, dual data entry. Like David was saying, typically with a manual system, you got an invoice in, and you key that information in, and then you got to key it into the accounting system. With an automated system, all of that is done automatically. It provides a more unified user experience for the invoice side of the house, but also on the payment side of processing payments. The approval workflow, you could customize it as much as you like. You can have workflows that could be just single layer, where it comes in and comes to the approver, and then from there it goes to the accounting side of the house for payment. Complex as multi-layer, where it could be dictated on dollar amount. It could be a workflow could be based on the actual vendor. It could be a workflow could be created based on the location of where that invoice has been received from. So a automated system gives you a lot greater flexibility on the type of workflows, and it gives you a lot better control on those workflows in general. And then it gives you all the benefits of instant visibility as far as the amount of payments that are due, when they're due, and the approval status of those payments. It gives you a flexibility to pay invoices when you want to pay them, and it gives you greater visibility because you can have all those invoices that are due within, say, a 30-day period. You can have those all up on screen at one time, and you can determine which ones you want to pay now and which ones you would like to hold off and pay later. And then you're looking at the whole benefit of the integration into your accounting system. Here at AvidXchange, we support about 140 different types of accounting systems. Some of them are real nice AP. Other ones are file-based. Basically, at that point, it's just click a button and all that information will flow from Avid into the accounting system. Meaning your accounting systems will always remain your system of record, and all payments will still be executed from the accounting system. When you automate the process itself, it's just going to take away that manual process that you currently experience as far as like cutting checks and things like that. Automation really talking about is, you know, a lot of, I end up speaking to a lot of AP staff or controllers. They're concerned with, does that mean I'm going to be reducing staff? And a lot of people, AP clerks, they're worried about bringing on a new solution that automates because they think they're going to lose their job. What it really means is not reducing staff. It's more about restructuring the staff that you have and reallocating them to more critical and strategic activities instead of just doing the manual data entry and, you know, the low value tasks. And they could be doing more strategic activities and moving them into more strategic positions. You know, sometimes automation simply takes the pressure off of a overburdened team. We all know that the AP staff is understaffed and overworked majority of time. So anything you can do that could relieve that burden is just, will be so appreciative from the AP side of the house. And you could take them away from, again, having them no longer having to do that low value task of opening the mail, sorting it out, and keying that information, maybe in some cases 2 different systems. You could automate that, and then they could actually go into looking at other activities and spend their time, instead of fixing issues, a lot of times those issues should never happen in the first place, such as tracking down paper invoices. So let's take a look as far as AP and AP automation from the eyes of AvidXchange. For those who are not familiar with AvidXchange, we are a 18-year-old company. We are by far the leader inside the fintech industry for mid-market companies. We focus specifically around the mid-market space. We're a 100% cloud-based solution that integrates, like I said earlier, with about 140 different type of accounting systems to really help organizations of all sizes, from mid-market up to the lower upper end, as far as companies, to help them automate their accounts payable, and again, to remove that manual task and that whole paper process. Paper is still a big issue. Was then, and just managing that for AP department is still a big task for them. So by automating it, you do remove that whole paper issue around AP processing. So let me take a look into as far as what it looks like to automate AP process inside of AvidXchange. So when you would become a client of Avid, everyone within your organization, your AP staff would have a user login. You log into AvidXchange, into your account, username, password. And what's nice with Avid is we allow multiple ways for invoices to come into our system. They could be submitted into Avid 3 different ways. They could come in by an email. We'll create a designated email address for your suppliers that they could send in their invoices to us electronically. It'll be transparent to your suppliers. They'll think they're sending them to you. Actually, they'll be sending to AvidXchange, and at that point, we're going to take over as far as the processing. If you would like, you can still scan the invoices if they do happen to come in to you manually. Someone drops it out on your desk. So you could scan the invoices into the system if you prefer. And we will also set up a mail drop box for you. So for those vendors that still mail invoices into you, you'll have a designated lockbox, which will then gather all those invoices. Once those invoices are received, we'll open up, collect at your mailroom. We'll scan them into our system. We'll actually do that twice a day. So if an invoice is received before 3 o'clock, we'll guarantee that that invoice will be available for you to view before the end of the day. If an invoice is received after 3 o'clock, we'll guarantee that it will be available to you first thing in the morning the following day. Once we receive the invoice, we'll extract all the header detail information around that invoice, such as PO number, when it is submitted, and then we'll initiate the approval process based on the defined rules and the conditions and other logic that are around it. So the very first thing you would see as far as when you log into the system would be your dashboard. This dashboard really has 2 tabs. This will be all the invoices.
Hey, John. John, if you just want to start that slide over, it looks like you cut out audio for the start of that slide.
Sure. So what you're looking at here is what's called My Invoice, and it has two tabs on it. The first one is all pending invoices to be approved. So it's an easy dashboard. You could quickly go through it. You could click on which invoices you would like to approve. You could drill down on it, and you can see which invoices you would like to take some action This represents all invoices for a specific user. This could be for coding or a simple view. Users have access to all the pertinent data from invoice number, vendor ID, the name, and the amount. You can configure this view to see only the data that's important to you. So if you don't want to see information on due dates or suppliers, you can hide that information. So again, the view could be customized specifically for you. If you just want to review an invoice and you're really not responsible for the coding, you could just check on the box and view that invoice. There is a second tab, dispute it. So what that does is if there's an invoice that for some reason through the approval process has been disputed, you can just go on that tab first thing in the morning, see what the issues are, and make the initial correction. So what you're looking at here is what the invoice would look like within inside of AvidXchange. On the left, you can see all the header information that was keyed in by AvidXchange during the invoice creation. We actually have a team in Salt Lake City and also in Charlotte that is going to really key in this information, but we also use OCR technology. What is unique about AvidXchange, we don't rely on 100% of OCR technology to get this information into your accounting system, because what we have seen and historically have seen and the industry have seen is that OCR is not 100% accurate, but the information that is going to be sent over to your accounting system has to be. So really for us to guarantee that the information that's being pulled off of your invoice is 100% accurate, that we're going to use OCR for a majority of it, but we also have a team that is going to validate and verify any of the information and compare to that paper invoice or the electronic invoice that came in and make sure what we are keying in is 100% accurate. Because again, the key is make sure all of the information that eventually flows into your accounting system is exactly the way it should be. As we said earlier, we do have some smart coding tools that can help pre-populate some of this information. One is default GL code. Each time we see an invoice from a specific supplier, what we'll do is with the smart coding is 100% of those invoices then will then pre-populate to a particular accounting code that is associated to that specific supplier. We'll also have some smart coding which will remember how an invoice was previously reported. So once an invoice is entered, our system will remember the distribution lines that are associated with a particular supplier, the supplier account number, or the combination of the two, such as, the descriptions, the GL account, or even the percentage allocations as far as how a invoice should be split out. We'll also use smart coding that allows users to populate a template. So you could create a template and import it in that'll tell us how you want an invoice to be distributed across, a GL account or descriptions or even allocations. So not only do we have the manual process where we're moving it to an automated system, and we also have the human intervention compared to just relying on OCR. We do have the smart coding that'll make it a lot easier as far as getting this information into the system as well. Another one of the sections within inside the tool itself is this comment section. This is a great place to track any type of communication happening today around this particular, think about the communication that's occurring that you may have over the phone with your suppliers. Could be via an email or it could be even in person. Now you can have all this information and access to one location. No longer could it be stored, say, in your CRM system. All that information that is pertinent to invoice, you can now store it within inside of one system and have a complete record of it. Logging a comment is as simple as just, typing the note and selecting log comment. And when you're submitting, you can also have the option of sending that comment. via an email to your suppliers. But again, it's not required, but it does give you that option. I think probably one most powerful aspect as far as automating a AP process is around the workflow. The workflow tabs, it contains all the information around the workflow of that invoice for your organization. You can see what that invoice currently is, and as well as one of the great things about, our workflow engine is that you have this ability to set timers and alerts at each step of the workflow, allocating user a number of days for them to take action. So, for example, say a invoice comes in and I've allocated it for my manager that they have 3 days to review, code, and approve. On day 4, that invoice is still with my manager. It will be automatically show up on some exception and acceleration report. So management and the AP department can take specific action, not only with that individual to see exactly why it's taking them long required time, but it could also mean that they may be able to manually push that invoice to someone else for approval. You also have the ability to build in conditional steps for the approval process. This allows you to insert a step in the workflow that may be only pertinent to that particular invoice per se. If an invoice meets a particular dollar amount, for example, if it's greater than $5,000, it may need to get VP approval. So you could build that into our workflow tool. If it's less than $5,000, it'll bypass the VP and wouldn't need their approval. Another rule could be a supplier default workflow. It'll look at the supplier, and that supplier may be assigned to a particular individual. So each time that invoice is received from that supplier, that invoice will go to that particular individual on your AP side. You can also set up a workflow based on location. So if a supplier is coming in from a particular company or a particular property or entity, you could assign that invoice to someone specific on your team. What's also nice with our workflow is you can ad hoc approver on a case-by-case basis. So if an invoice comes in and someone has a question on it, you could add a particular new approver to your workflow. That person will get notified that there's an approval for them to review. They could go into the system, look at it, approve it. Then once they approve it, that ad hoc approver will be removed from the workflow, so they're not automatically added to it. They're just added to it on an as-needed basis. So that's a really unique feature within inside of our workflow engine. And then the last slide here that I'd like to show you as far as on the tool itself is really the history tab. Think of the history tab as an automatic audit trail. It's going to capture all the activities and all the actions that were performed on this particular invoice. Anytime that anything has been modified, any of the details that have been changed, along with if there was a change in the username, there'll be a date stamp, a time stamp. All of those are going to be automatically tracked within inside this history tab. So what's really nice is for your auditors, if they want to see any of the activities that have taken place on a particular invoice, they could go to this history tab and just quickly see at a snapshot any of the activities that have been involved on this invoice, from the amount of time when an invoice was received, how long it took to get approved, who approved it, and what the next step is for the payment process. So let's talk about that next step. So the invoice has come in, we've scanned it already, all that information has been pulled off of it, it's been put into the system, it's gone through the workflow, it's been approved. So the next logical step is you need to pay it. You need to pay your suppliers for that invoice that they've sent in. Here at AvidXchange, we have what's called the AvidPay network. And it's really the process around paying your vendors. It's a full service offering which includes the software, which we make available to your team so they can have control over the entire payment approval process. And it really gives them full visibility into all of the payments to your suppliers. We also supply a service component to your suppliers that'll help reduce all the manual tasks that your accounting staff currently has. So to step you through it, so the invoice will come in, the accounting system will generate a payment file. That payment file will be generated, and then that goes into our payment network pay control system. Then at that point, we're going to determine, based on our AvidPay network, this network is comprised of currently about 400,000 different suppliers. We know how these suppliers want to be paid. We know by speaking with them, do they want to receive a virtual payment by a credit card, a one-time, one-use credit card where they'll receive payment directly from Avid for their invoice? Do they prefer to receive it by AvidPay Direct? AvidPay Direct is an enhanced ACH payment. So instead of just receiving a standard ACH payment, they're going to receive a enriched ACH, which is going to include more rich data in comparison to a standard ACH. And if your suppliers still prefer to receive payment by check, we're more than happy to cut them a check and process that for them. And at that point, we will make that payment on your behalf, and then you could do the reconciliation with inside the accounting system. What's really unique with our AvidPay network is we know how your suppliers want to be paid. We'll work with them to see how many of them we can move from a manual check process and send them checks, and see if we can move them to this virtual credit card or even a ACH. So, a lot of people have a hard time to wrap their arms around when I'm talking about what this Avid network really means. I think a great analogy is when you think about Uber. Uber has customers, and what do these customers want? Customers are you and I when we're asking Uber to pick us up for a ride. What do we want? We want a reliable ride, and we want a secure way to make that payment. On the other side of the equation of this Uber network are drivers. What do drivers want? Real simple. They want passengers, and they want an easy way to get paid. So how do I, as a customer, work with the drivers? Well, that's where Uber sits in, because they have this network of drivers and customers, and they have this. And what they supply is the secure platform and the software that allows me to request a ride and make that secure payment, and it allows the drivers to have passengers and receive payment. So if you think about the Uber network in relation to the AvidPay network, it's very, very similar. On the right-hand side, we have buyers or suppliers. What do they want? You want a complete purchase-to-pay automated system, and you want a secure way to pay, just like customers and riders do on the Uber network. And on the flip side, you have suppliers. Think of them as the drivers. What do they want? They want to improve cash flow. They want to receive their cash as quickly as possible, and they also want an easy way to get paid. So how do those two work together? You got AvidXchange sitting in the middle, and we provide the secure platform for the suppliers and you as the customer to work together, and we supply the software so everything could be in the cloud. So as a buyer, you have the secure way to make those payments, and for your suppliers, there's a secure way and easy way for them to receive payment. So with our AvidXchange network and our AvidXchange Pay, that's as far as how we pay your suppliers. They still continue as far as how they would like to receive payment. If they want to receive payment in either of those three methods, we'll accommodate it for them. What it really does, it does help prevent a lot of the fraud associated with sending out checks. When we send out a check on your behalf to one of your suppliers, that's going to include a positive pay file to your bank, so you no longer have to supply that to your bank. What we'll also do is you'll no longer have to track as far as has someone received that check, and if a check is still outstanding, why haven't they cashed it? We have a team in our Charlotte corporate office of about 200 individuals on our supplier network team that what they will do is if a check has not been cashed, they will proactively go and call your suppliers and ask them, one, have they received the check? And two, if they have, why they have not recashed it? We'll do that. We'll make about 2 or 3 phone calls. At that point, if we can't reach them or get any type of resolution, we'll reach back then out to you and see if we could gain some additional support. So again, we're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, so your AP staff could do more critical and strategic work, and not just more of the maintain more of the activities and the lower activities that they currently are doing. You'll still always maintain your existing bank relationships and the bank account. When we are pulling funds, what we are doing is we're pulling them into a trust account. Those funds you have complete control over. They are not co-mingled with any other funds or any other companies. So you have complete control. And then at that point, once you decide you want to release those funds for payment, they'll be released from the trust account and then transferred into either an ACH payment or via a virtual credit card. Or if they still want to receive a paper check, we'll cut them a check on your behalf. And what's the really nice thing is you really have this 24/7 visibility. Your suppliers will. One, they'll have the visibility on the status of that invoice has been received, because we do have a supplier portal that your suppliers can log into. And again, the benefit for them is they can see the visibility of the invoices, but it also gives them the visibility in the status of the payment. So no longer will your AP team have to handle those calls coming in, because again, your suppliers, they're going to call you for 2 reasons. One, they're going to call you to see if you received the invoice. Two, the second call is always, when will I get paid? The supplier network solves both of those for you, so you no longer have to receive those calls from your suppliers, and your suppliers no longer have to make those calls into you. They can log into the supplier portal, see exactly when that invoice received, see where that invoice is in the workflow, and secondly, they can see when it will be paid as far as on your payment cycle. So hopefully that gives you a really quick overview as far as the difference between a manual system and when you do move it to a more automated system such as AvidXchange.
Yeah, thank you, John, and thank you, Dave, both for presenting there. There was definitely a lot of good content, and thanks to all of our attendees who have stuck around for this webinar. Again, right now we'll take any questions you have. I know we've already gotten a couple that have come through, and we're also going to launch a poll question here so we can figure out the best way to follow up with you all. So I'm going to launch that poll, and feel free to also send some questions in as well. So that poll is out there now, so vote in there, and I'll start with some questions that have come in. So John, the first one we've got here is, what methods of payment can my vendors choose from? And I think you talked about that a bit, but
yeah, just real quick view. There's multiple ways they can receive payment. They can receive payment the old-fashioned way as far as receiving a check. Well, we've seen, Bobby, 50% of vendors still receive their payment by a check. So if they prefer it that way, we'll cut them a check. We'll cut that check for 68 cents. That includes the stamp, the envelope, processing, and mailing out. They could also receive it by enhanced ACH, AvidXchange Pay. That's the enhanced ACH with the enriched data. But what we'll try to do is see if they can receive payment by a virtual credit card. Virtual credit card, they'll receive their payment by far the quickest of all 3 options. But again, it's all determined by that customer, how they would like to receive payment.
Another question is, so can I actually send all of my vendor payments through AvidXchange Pay? Yep,
they can send 100% of all their payments through our system for their vendor payments. You select which payments you want to pay, have be to be paid by Avid. You know, some of them you may want to still send out a check because it may be a one-time instance. But if you decide you would like to have all of them paid by AvidXchange, we just facilitate that as well. You know, things such as, you know, dividends to shareholders or cross-border payments, you know, employee payroll. Typically, those won't go through the AvidXchange payment system. Because those, a lot of times, those are one time.
Another question we have, am I still able to print checks if we're with Avid?
Yep, you sure can. You know, there's still, we understand that there's times where you still need to cut a check and print checks out. So we do offer that capability. We offer a self-managed payment option that enables you to, you know, print MICA checks or just even blank check stock.
Great. Someone's asking here, what's the implementation timeline and that process like?
Yep, implementation, what it's going to look like is we're going to run as fast as you want to run. On average, from the time the sale has closed until it's up and running, it's right around 45 days. So again, we're going to run as fast and that you can run and you want to be up and running. If you say you want to be up and running within 30 days, we're going to put the resources behind it. As long as you have the resources on your side, we can get you up and running within 30 days. I've seen it as quick as right around 2 weeks. I'm going to say that's by far an exception to the rule. There was no crazy workflow, pretty standard integration to a standard accounting system. We've done it as quick as 2 days. But on average, it's right around 45 days to get it up and running with your ERP system. And again, we work with about 140 different accounting systems out there. So there shouldn't be one that you're currently using that we haven't seen or worked with in the past.
And I think that answers one of the questions that just came in, and that was which accounting systems does Avid work with? And seems like there's quite a few there based on your answer to that last question.
Yeah, there's a host of them that we work with. Some of them are API-based, Sage Intacct, NetSuite, Microsoft Dynamics GP, Acumatica. As far as the horizontal accounting systems, then on some of the vertical ones, we have integrations into, say, RealPage and MRI. And then if we don't have APIs, we do have an accounting extract file. Basically, we already have the accounting extract file laid out for probably 130 other accounting systems that are out there. And it's a matter of just pushing that from AvidXchange into the accounting system.
Great. Are you able to make international payments or pay international vendors with Avid?
Currently, right now, we are only U.S.-based. I won't say that won't change in the near future, but as of November 29th, just U.S. payments.
Okay. In terms of the cost for AvidXchange, is there additional cost per approver in the workflow?
No. The AvidXchange goes to market is we make the tool available to everyone in your organization. It's all transaction-based, so it's all based on the number of invoices that flow through the system. Rough estimate is think of every invoice that comes through the system is $1.50. That $1.50 covers that mailroom service where your vendors would mail their invoice into us. We're going to open it up, pull that invoice out, scan it into our system, verify that it's 100% accurate. It includes the workflow. And then at that point, if you want us to process payment, each payment is only 68 cents. And again, like I said earlier, that 68 cents includes I think a stamp now is 50 cents, and an envelope is probably 20 cents. So I don't think you'd find a more cost-effective way if you're mailing out checks than to use the AvidXchange where it's literally 68 cents to manage it on the back end.
Great. I think we got one more question here for you, John. Will my invoice approval process need to change at all by making the move to Avid?
Nope, not at all. What we're going to do is look at your current workflow on your approval process, and we can mimic it 100%. Our workflow tool is very, very flexible. So again, like illustrated earlier, it could be as simple as a single workflow where it comes in, one person approves it, and it goes to AP for processing. Or it could be multi-layer based on dollar amount, location, vendor, supplier. So no, your workflow will not have to change. We may make some suggestions on some best practices that we have seen to help improve it. But no, if you're happy and content with your current workflow, you can have it exactly the way it is currently. The nice part about it is it will be automatic. So that invoice is being, someone does leave or they're on vacation, that invoice currently is sitting on their desk. When you automate it, you can put triggers where if it's sitting and hasn't been approved, say after 3 days, it could go to a ad hoc approver, or that person, when they go on vacation, they could delegate their approval to, say, their manager. So that invoice should never have to sit in the system beyond the allocated time that you designated.
Great, and I think that wraps up our Q&A for today. So thank you for joining us. I don't know, John, if you have any closing words you'd like to say, or Dave.
No, I just appreciate everyone joining us today. Again, if you're still pushing paper throughout your organization, we would love to speak with you. And again, thank you for carving out some time this morning for us.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Again, the recording will be sent out most likely tomorrow morning once it's done processing. So thank you again to everyone for joining us, and have a great day.